to the podcast Connected Curious Care, the podcast for health professionals who communicate. My name is Carina, and I am so grateful that today I have a very special guest to me, Gill Hasson. Hello, Gill. Welcome.
Hello, Carina. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, Gill, a lot of the viewers are going to know you. And if I listed, you are a coach, a trainer, a writer, a teacher. The list is long. And your beautiful mission is it to bring people into their full potential. And just tell us a little bit about your journey, how you got there, and who you are.
Yeah, okay. So, yes, I am all those things that you described. But I can tell you how I got to be all those things that you listed that I am. How did I find my path? How did I come to help other people realize their potential? Well, I think it's because when I was at school as a teenager, I was fine at school as a young child, but as a teenager, I found it boring, uninspiring. It was just something to get through. And I left school and then I travelled. I wanted some adventure and excitement. So I travelled and worked in Germany and in France and in America. And that was all great. And then my husband and myself had two children. And then when I got into my mid-30s, I was about 34 and both my boys were at school by then. And I thought, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, I don't have any sort of transferable skills really that work in the sort of job place, no particular career I want to follow. So I decided to do something that we call an access course here. And that's a year's course for personal development, building your confidence, study skills, thinking about what you might want to do in future. And at the end of that year, I signed up to do a university degree in social anthropology, which I didn't even know that was a subject. Someone told me about it, and I thought, that's the one for me, all about people's cultures and beliefs and ideas and history. So I did that, and that was great. But what had really inspired me was this access course that I had done at the start, because everyone who was on it was what we call a mature student. So they're all over the age of 25, I think. And we'd all not had brilliant experiences of school. But the support and encouragement we got from the tutors on this course really helped us all to realise our potential and realise that we do have potential, we have skills, we have abilities that are just waiting to be realised. And I thought, that is actually what I want to do. I want to teach on a course like that. Mm-hmm. So when I finished the degree, I did a 1-year course in teaching adults in education. And then I just picked up sort of freelance work, teaching communication, assertiveness, confidence. I went back to the university and taught study skills. So all those sort of personal effectiveness, career development subjects is what I taught. And then after about 10 years of teaching, myself and a colleague were very interested actually in the idea of resilience, how people, when they're going through difficulties, because we work with a lot of people on courses that had been through difficult times and when they had now come to a place where they wanted to move forward and be better with their lives. So we were interested in what makes people resilient and what doesn't. And we looked at research, realised the research reflected what we had seen in people and thought, well, there's a book in that. So I was very fortunate that I found a publisher that said, yeah, we'd be very interested in you writing this. So we did. And from there, we were asked, what other subjects do you teach that you could write about? And on it went from there. So then Sue, my colleague, she had some ideas for books she wanted to write. I had ideas for myself. We hadn't fallen out. We just had separate ideas. And it went on from there. So that's sort of how I found my path, really. That's the story.
Wow. And, looking back from this first book. I think now it's 20 plus books
Yes, it
we
is.
look at. And what really struck me when I looked at your books is this really thread that goes through it, this theme that comes up again and again, which is the theme about connection and how we connect with ourselves and how we connect with others, which is also just the core of my work and what I'm so passionate about. And so just tell us what fascinates you on connection.
Well, it's the fact that we recognizing, this isn't something that I've discovered. We all actually know this, that as human beings, we're a social species.
Mhm.
We are. It's innate within us to be with other people. In order to survive as a species, we have to be with each other. We
Mhm.
have to support each other, connect with each other, provide for each other. We have to support, the ones that are weaker at times, and then the stronger ones have to come to the front. There's a whole range of dynamics that go on there, and that's what really interests me, and why I was so interested to do the degree in social anthropology. I'm just interested in how people communicate, how they connect with each other, and how actually we all have the same basic human needs, which many people will be familiar with Maslow's theory on this, the hierarchy of needs. That first of all, of course, before anything, we've got to have food, water, warmth, shelter, safety, and then we go up the scale, and we need to be accepted by the group. We need to have confidence and self-esteem, and then we need to be able to actualize ourselves at the top. Is the sort of last part of the, but we all do that in different ways, entirely depending on our culture, our community. So it's endlessly fascinating for me.
It is. It is. It so is. And yeah, this I think just alone to recognize that all of our needs are universal
Yeah,
helps so much with communicating, especially if it's a hard conversation, if there's conflict that comes up, just to come back to this acknowledgement
yeah.
helps a lot. Is there something that helps you to stay connected? Are there some factors you found out about yourself that you say, if I have these things in place, it's easier for me to get connected, and some other factors that may make it hard for me to be connected?
Yeah, I think it's sort of not just myself, but what I would say for all of us is that in order to be connected to others, we have to reach out. Yes, of course, people will, they sometimes they'll seek you out, but they don't know you're there. You have to reach out, either physically say, hey, I've moved here, I'm new to the neighborhood. Come round, or can we go for a drink or a meal, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. So sometimes you actually have to just reach out and make yourself known in order to be connected. Other times it's the fact you might already know plenty of people, you might have family and friends, and although it can't be you all the time, you do have to make that connection. It's a two-way thing. Relationships are a two-way phone. It's sort of like a road. It runs, human relationships run in both ways. So, the road runs both ways. So it means you've got to make the effort, and other people have to make the effort. And I think often it's either, it's easy to think, oh, well, no, I don't know how to do that. But there's very simple ways that we can connect with other people. You don't have to have a lot of money.
Mm.
Um, yeah, you need to be a little bit creative in your thinking, and you have to have a bit of courage to step out and
Yeah.
reach out to people, because yeah,
I
you might get rejected. People might reject you, but
mm,
but mostly people are willing to be friends.
mhm. I just when you mentioned that, I could almost feel in my body this little courage it takes, yeah, to make ourselves a little vulnerable, to go
Yeah,
up to a new person and say, "Hey, I'm Carina. Who are you?"
yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, and of course, we're all in different cultures or from different cultures, and I'm in the UK, I'm in England. It's sort of people tend to feel that if you live in the south of England, you're quite standoffish and not very friendly. But if you live in the north of England, everybody talks to everybody. I, I'm sure we all feel that about the countries and the cultures that we're in, that in some cultures and countries it's easier to reach out and be accepted, and others it's quite hard work.
Yeah, yeah. Another factor I know is so important for you too, because you wrote books about it as well, is being in the presence and being mindful. And so when you combine these thoughts of mindfulness and communication, what comes up for you? Like, how does it look for you if I'm having a mindful conversation?
Well, you're quite simply your presence. You're there listening and taking part and making a contribution to the
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
And I think the listening part is the best sort of tip and strategy I've got for keeping present and not being distracted and being engaged with the other person is to listen as if you are going to have to repeat back what they've just told you.
Ah, yeah.
So it's when we ask somebody for directions, if we're in the street and we think we want to get to the library, the museum, the particular shop, we say to somebody, can you tell me how to get there? And they go, yes, you need to go 2 blocks down, then turn left, take the third block on the right, turn right there, and then you'll go past a park with some big trees, and you're visualizing this, but you're going through it in your head,
Yeah.
and then you do often repeat it back. You do often go, okay, so wait a minute, so I have to go 2 blocks down. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
You're not always going to do that in every conversation, but if you sort of half attempt at least to listen as if though you are going to have to
Yeah.
repeat it back, that's a I find a really good strategy for making sure that you stay present and you're mindful and engaged and you're not distracted by
Yeah.
something else.
That's such a good tip that you can just simply use anywhere you are in
Yeah,
any
yeah.
situation. Yeah,
And it certainly works. I've got 3 boys, they've all grown up now, but, sometimes our kids just tell you this long story and you're like, "Oh god, hurry up with this, I wanna make dinner." And yeah, so that I learned that. Don't tell them that. I learned I learned that. And you just make little comments like, "Oh, did they?" And, "Gosh, so it was really big, was it?" So you just that helps as well to just acknowledge what the other person has said by repeating small bits back.
100%. I think presence is really the foundation of everything.
Yeah,
And what helps me too, besides the presence, is just asking myself one question, which is, what do I really want? Like, where do I really come from? Right? Like, what is my intention right now
yeah,
going in this conversation? And so often I catch myself this acknowledging that, ooh, I think I want to win. I think I want to be right, or right,
yeah,
and to just rephrase it and to really get to this point of, can I go into a conversation being open and curious and just want to understand,
yeah,
then start. That makes a big difference for me. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah, with no preconceived ideas, no wanting to get something out of it. Just let's just see where this goes and
Yeah.
stay with it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And something that comes up often in our workshops is, because we are health professionals, it is this thought that mindfulness seems so daunting if you are in an ER, if you are on a hectic normal life, a day work day life. Do you have also some strategies that could help, even if it's busy and loud around us and chaotic, to just stay in this presence?
Yeah, I think the thing that I've learned there is that yes, of course, there's always other things going on around you, and then there's other thoughts that enter your head. Oh goodness, I've got to do this next. I've forgotten to do that.
Yeah.
I must make sure that I do this. So these sort of thoughts come in as well,
Mhm.
and so w- what there's a sort of a Zen type of saying that's quite well known. Actually, it's when you're walking, walk; when you're eating, eat; when you're talking, talk. It's sort of thinking, instead of thinking that we're actually we can multi-purpose,
Mhm.
actually recognizing, yeah, you can do lots of things, but you can only ever do one thing at once. And yes, you can move on to what else is going on. Yes, you can go later to find out what was everyone talking about over there. What was all that hoo ha? There suddenly seemed to be a burst of noise or activity. You can find out about that, but right at this moment, this is what you're doing, and you
Right.
stay focused on that. And if you can,
Mhm.
it's something you have to keep reminding yourself of. I find I have to do that. I have to, when suddenly something else comes into my head, if I've got a chance, I'll write it down. I think, right, just write that down. Then I've got it out of my head, and it doesn't have to be there
Yeah.
anymore. But
Yeah.
I also just, I have to remind myself, because our brains do go off in another direction. We are distracted. So it's fine. It's not something that you particularly master. It's something that you have to keep practicing. Remind yourself, this is what you're doing now. You're walking, you're talking, you're eating, you're doing this procedure with a patient, you're whatever it is, that's what you're doing. You can come to the next thing afterwards.
Yeah. I'm a very visual learner. So the picture that really helped me on that is when I go over the street, when I cross the street with my daughter who's 6 now, I usually have my hand behind her back when we walk, just to like guide her and make
Yeah,
sure it's
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
It really helps me when I'm in such a moment and I try to be present, and thoughts and planning and all the other things come. I
yeah,
just try to have this guiding hand to move them along.
yeah.
So it's still loving. It's not like, go away, there's something wrong, but it keeps it moving.
Yeah, yeah, and that physical connection that you're providing, that provides a continuity and keeps it moving as well. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah. One thing that I noticed myself, Jill, is that I had super busy days at the hospital and I still came home and I felt full of energy. And then I had days where it wasn't unusually busy, but I just felt completely drained and done. And what I often found reflecting back on these days is that it correlated with my ability to connect, how much energy I had left at the end of the day. So it
Mm,
was it was really a good indicator to know if I had been in touch with myself and others
yes.
that day. And I just wondered if you had similar experience in how the connection can help us from burning out or help us to keep our energy buckets filled up.
Yeah, so, yeah, how do we keep our energy buckets filled up? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, uh, what I think it is about resilience, really. We need to recognize that, yeah, it's very easy to burn out. It's very easy to just give too much of ourselves. Particularly, I think, that's why I'm generalizing, but I think that's why health professionals go into the profession, because they want to make a difference. They want to contribute, and you can contribute endlessly to other people's lives. There's always someone else, or there's always something else you can do for that person if you can't move on to the next person.
Mhm.
So it's recognizing what your limits and your boundaries are. Definitely, that's really, really important. Recognize what you're able to do, what
Mhm.
is not one of your skills, what it's about getting support. So with this idea of resilience, what the research has shown is that there's sort of different aspects of resilience. So there's what we call personal aspects of resilience and social aspects. So
Mhm.
those personal aspects, it comes out of some, I'll just give you a quick background. It comes
Mhm.
out of some research done by researchers at UCLA,
Mhm.
and led by a woman called Emmy Werner, and she is quite an unusual, unique piece of research, because They tracked all the children that were born on I don't know which island, but a particular island in Hawaii, that were born in 1958. And they tracked them for 40 years.
Wow.
And this island had quite high levels of deprivation, so
Mm.
substance misuse, poverty, alcoholism, that, those sort of markers. And at the end of the 40 years, they looked to see, so who were the people that had been born in 1958? Who were the ones that had managed to sort of rise above that, and who were the ones that had been dragged down, and what was the difference between them? And they found that there's these aspects of resilience. I think there must be about 14 or 15 of them. So the personal ones were having values, knowing what's important to you. So being aware of, what's important, having clear, realistic goals and expectations. And I must point out at this point that you don't have to have all of these, but if you've just got a handful of these aspects of resilience, you can, it's a dynamic that you can develop the others. So having good communication skills, being able to seek help and receive help, and information and support, definitely helping, supporting and encouraging others as well, feeling a sort of a feeling of spirituality, which means feeling that you're part of and connected to something bigger and more enduring. And that might relate to a religion, a belief in a god. It might be a feeling that you enjoy nature, and just seeing the daffodils come up every year, feeling that that's going to continue, that's an everlasting thing that you're part of. Being able to think positively, having a reasonable level of confidence and self-esteem, knowing what your skills and strengths and your abilities are, being able to be solution focused and make decisions, being flexible and able to adapt. Very importantly, this relates to positivity, seeing yourself as a survivor, not a victim, seeing that if things do get really bad, you can move on from that, and that you take responsibility for your choices and actions, and that you can reflect and learn from any difficulties that you've had. So there's quite a lot of things there, but you can see in many ways they're related to each other. So it's actually, when I have taught courses on resilience, I've got people to think about which of those aspects of resilience they already have, because we do, pretty much we do. But the one thing that the research shows makes all the difference is it doesn't matter how many of those aspects of resilience you've got. What's absolutely vital is you have to have an attachment to one other person in your life. And that's very interesting to me because, from the 1950s with John Bowlby's research, it showed this idea of how, as human beings, as babies, his original theory was that, babies need their mothers. Now, and that certainly kept mothers at home for quite a while, because they were told that, women need to be at home with their children. Actually, that sort of has been reconsidered to the baby has to have one main carer, one significant carer. So having a significant person in your life, and that could be a mentor, it could be your manager at work, it could be your partner at home, it could be your parent, it could be just somebody that you have in your life that you can, your best friend. So so when we go back to connection, we can see how the support and encouragement of other people is so important for our resilience and managing to not burn out.
100%. And coming back to one of the first examples you gave around the personal factors, I think also the connection we have to ourselves, so that we are able to give ourselves some empathy.
Absolutely. Having realistic expectations. Not expecting too much of ourselves, and absolutely recognizing that we've got skills and abilities, but we've also got limits, and that's okay.
It's 100% okay, and especially then to also take the moment and acknowledge it, and just, yeah, really give myself some hug for that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, reflect and acknowledge what what, however badly things might have gone. There's always some seed of positivity there,
Yeah.
something that and sometimes it's really hard to find that, but yeah,
Mm.
you can do it.
You wrote another book, Jill, that was around communication and how we connect with anyone. And there was an interesting aspect in that book, which was the concept of intuition,
Mm.
right? And so I thought that's so interesting to really also rely on our intuition and not to get so hang up with all these um, advices and recommendations on how to communicate, because at the end of the day we also have a lot of in us already.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
could you speak a little bit about how you see intuition fitting in and how we tap into it?
Yeah, well, first of all, for example, well, let me explain what intuition is. Intuition is something we've all got. It's innate within us. It's a knowing that we don't have to think about. So if we it happens so fast, a particular knowledge, that you think that you haven't thought about it, but actually you've had some experience, you've had thoughts, you've had feelings about something, and that's all stored away in your brain. So sometimes it suddenly all comes to the front again, and you know that something's not quite right. So not to do with communication, but something that happened to me, I intuitively knew. Was many years ago, I was on holiday in Spain, and I was with family and friends, and we were walking along, and I had my youngest was small, and he wanted to walk along a little wall, and I was holding his hand, and these three women kept coming and sitting on the wall, so I had to lift him off, walk round them, and put him back down again and walk along. And on the third time they did this, I was thinking, this is weird, but didn't think any more really particularly of it. And then the women they got up and walked past me as I was still holding my son's hand as he was walking along this low wall. And after about 20, 30 seconds, I suddenly looked into my purse and my wallet had gone.
Mm.
And I just knew they had pickpocketed me. And I ran after them, and they denied it. But then one of them actually slipped it back, went behind me, and slipped it back into my purse. And everyone said to me, "How did you know?" And I said, "I don't know. But it was all those things came together. This isn't right. Why did they keep doing that? I'm in a crowded holiday place, so I didn't actually think any of that. But my brain worked that all out, and it came intuitively to me that this isn't right."
Right.
However, how that relates to communication so that just shows how all that information is there. There's other things that are there that we know intuitively. We can tell by someone else's facial expression very often, the very basic facial expressions. We know what fear looks like, what joy and happiness, we know what disgust looks like. And there's sort of some basic
Yeah.
ones that we absolutely know, and obviously in health professionals see those extreme emotions in people, so they know immediately. But
Mm.
sometimes others aren't quite how people are feeling and what they're thinking isn't quite so obvious. So of course you can ask them, and they might tell you, but they also might not be truthful with you. So, what we then look for is a combination of sort of what a person says, how they look, what their body language is like. And often we just know actually really how somebody's feeling or what they're feeling. Sometimes in a group situation, I'm sure that maybe when maybe you're working with a patient, and you've got family members there as well, you can look around those faces and you can tell who's like, "Oh God, this is boring. I know they're ill, but I really can't wait to get out of here." You can. There's just they're not saying anything, but there's just something about them, and or the other person that's maybe really overly concerned and is going to need you to talk to them afterwards outside the room. You can pick that up, and we
Excellent.
you
That-
can't put your finger on it, but you just know. And you say to that person, "Did you want maybe a word outside in the hallway after we've finished?" "Oh yes. Oh, that would be really good. Thank you very much." And and they obviously think, "Wow, she's great. She's really picked up on me." And that is great. It's nice to feel that, but that's what we're intuitively picking up on, what's going on for people by looking at the combination of signals that they're giving out.
yeah, and I think it's so much more than, as you said, that goes on in our brain. It's so much also our whole body and
Yeah,
body of the others, right? Like it's a feeling. Like it's like I can, and as more as you check in with yourself, the easier it is to recognize these things. But
yeah,
is it like a feeling of tenseness, or is it a feeling of relaxation? And what does that mean?
yeah,
Um, or it's like I switched roles at one point and I was a patient, and it really opened my eyes completely different in terms of how different communicators come towards me. And there was one nurse that I don't forget, and there was something so caring in her body language. She
mm,
did not even have to look at me. Like just seeing her made me feel I'm in good hands. There was
yeah,
just something about it. And it's, as you say, you can't put your finger on, you can't put it on words, but it's probably also just like this, where does she come from? She has this caring intention, and I can feel it without
yeah.
even having to say anything.
And yet, I think if you did have to analyze it, that's what would be interesting. Like when my wallet was stolen from my purse. When my friend said, "Well, how did you know?" I did actually have to analyze it and think, yeah, how did I know? Because just something just made me look into my purse.
Yeah.
Why did I do that? So it's interesting that if you did have to analyze it, or if you had a video of the person that was caring for you, you actually could think, you could look at her body language, you could look at the way she moved around, the things that she said and the things she didn't say,
Mhm.
that would actually think, yeah. And yet, our amazing brains just take that information immediately and give you that message.
A picture that comes
Yeah,
together. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, 100%. Um, Now, from intuition
yeah.
to diversity, come along with me.
Sure.
So, being in a hospital is an immensely diverse place, right? And not just around culture, but also around you work in such a hierarchical system where
Yeah.
just so much comes together. Um, do you have any recommendation or thoughts around how to stay connected in such a tense field where so much diversity comes together?
Yeah, it can feel that everybody's incredibly different, can't it? But as we mentioned right at the beginning, really, is that there are all, there are certain things that are universal between all of us. And so in situations where it feels that everybody's very different, or that you're very different from everyone else, the key thing is to look at what you've actually got in common. What is, you might have a common goal with,
Yeah,
what, we're all trying to help this patient here,
yeah,
that's what we're trying to do. um, that could be what the common goal is, but it could be actually we're all just trying to relax and breathe a sigh of relief that what's happened here, and we all do that in different ways. I think that's the thing, is that, acknowledge what have we got in common, what might we all be trying to achieve here or do, and also accept that we may all be going about it in different ways,
yeah.
and that there's no one particular necessarily a right way, but the end goal, that's what everyone's aiming for.
So what's so fascinating to me is also in this moment of what you describe as like, we are not that different. In a certain way, we want the same thing. If I take the time to fully understand someone that may have a different strategy achieving something or a different opinion on certain things, but if I can dive in and fully understand why something is so important to that person,
Right.
it often softens my yeah, maybe my own sense of what I want, and I can be more open to then grab onto that, and together we can find another solution.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Is actually what's going on for this other person that
Mm,
may be making them behave, respond, react in the way that they are, and
yeah,
then you can, yeah, adjust maybe your response. And it's about having empathy, isn't it? It's recognizing that how they're feeling about something. You might think, well, I wouldn't be anxious or worried about that, or I wouldn't be feeling regretful about that, or demanding. But you have felt anxious before, you have felt regretful, we've all experienced the same emotions pretty much. So we might not feel like that in that situation ourselves, but we know what that feeling's like. So the sort of thing, my mum's 93, and
mm,
unfortunately she's become increasingly anxious, especially since the COVID and the lockdown, and she gets anxious about things that I think are ridiculous to get anxious about. But I do know what it's like to get anxious, so I have to relate to the anxiety, not to what it is she's anxious about.
mhm, mhm. And to the underlying need, right? Because if
Yeah,
if the need is safety for the family
yeah,
members, you know how that feels like.
yeah,
So you share that
absolutely.
need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, and yeah, all emotions that the ones we tend to think of as negative actually have uh, a positive intent. They're there for a reason. Yeah, they're there to sort of alert us to a need. Absolutely.
Mhm, mm. Jill, I love your definition of assertiveness.
Yeah,
Because for you, assertiveness does not just mean that I can clearly and confidently say what I want and what I don't want. For you, it also includes that I help the other person
yeah,
to be able to say what they want and what they don't want, and to just take into consideration what that other person may need and how they feel. Um, do you have ideas around if I do go into a conversation, and even though I have that understanding of assertiveness, I may notice my partner does not have that definition of assertiveness. Um, how do you request that all of our feelings are being taken into consideration?
I think it can be very simple. It can be, this is what I want, or this is what I don't want. But I recognize, in any conversation, just that this is what I would like or not like. How do you feel about that? Would you and sometimes you have to help people by offering them suggestions. Would you prefer to do this, or would you prefer to do that? Sort
Mhm,
of give them an option.
mhm,
And of course you're not always going to agree, and but that starts the conversation.
yeah.
That can be so. For example, we have a family trip to make next week, and my couple of my boys are happy to sort of travel however myself and my husband do, but one of my sons said, well, I'd rather drive than get the train.
Uh-huh.
And I really want to get the train. Um, so I've said to him, tell me why. Why do you want to? Find out the reasoning behind why somebody feels like they do.
Mhm,
And I still felt, because I just thought, no, I'm actually going to take a stand here. This is very important to me.
Mhm.
That the bottom line is, and we're going to a friend's funeral. It's a family friend, and I'm talking at the funeral. So I don't want to get in the car and have traffic problems. And I know that the train is more likely to be reliable. So I just thought, okay, normally I would probably negotiate on this, but I've understood how he feels. But I've
Mhm.
said, fine, but I want to get the train. It's what we're going to do.
Mhm.
So I don't feel that I've trampled all over him. I explained what the reason was. And he actually said to me, this happened this morning actually. He said, Mum, you don't have to explain why you want to get the train. I said, no, I actually feel that I do. I would like you to listen to the reasons why this is important
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that wasn't anything to do with I'm the parent, he's the child, because he's not. He's 35. It was just about a communication between two people with different needs and wants, and in the end, as much as you do take into consideration other people's feelings and concerns, if you go along, if you negotiate and compromise, you have to own that.
Mhm.
You cannot afterwards go, oh well, I only did it because you wanted to, or
Yeah.
you made me to. That's just such a dreadful passive aggressive way of behaving.
Mhm.
Whereas, so you have to, if you decide you're going to take a stand, you have to take responsibility for that and know that sometimes there'll be consequences. That happened to me many years ago. I was teaching a class of teenagers who were horrendous. They were behaved, half of them was, well, five of them were behaved so badly. It was one of the most stressful experiences of my life. And I was teaching them at a community college. I was just asked to come in for the week and do this course. And I had to think to myself that evening, what what do I want here and what don't I want? Come on, let's take my own advice here about assertiveness. What I want is only the young people in the class that want to learn. What I don't want are those five that are just making things really difficult. They were being rude, they weren't listening, a whole range of really bad behavior. So I thought, okay, right, now you know what you want. Tomorrow you go and get it. So the next day I stood outside the classroom and said to, as each of them came in, I said, actually, you don't need to come today. You don't have to come into the room. And they went, why not? The two lads and then three young women. They came as two groups. And they said, why not? And I said, because you clearly didn't get anything out of yesterday and you're not going to get anything out of the rest of the course. I found you very disruptive. So you might as well go home. And they said, well, we want to come in today. And I said, I don't want you there. And, that's it. So off they went. Later in the morning, someone from the college came and said, we've just heard, these youngsters have said that you won't let them in. You're going to have to. I said, no, I won't. That's not going to happen. Oh, okay. Then someone else came in, and then finally I was asked at lunchtime, would I go and see the principal of the college? And he said, you're going to have to take them back in. And I said, no, I'm not. And I said, and actually, and I knew my rights. I said, I think you'll find that you are failing to provide a safe teaching and learning environment. You've got these kids in here that shouldn't really be in here. He said, oh, okay, all right, no, that's fine. The consequences were I knew that college would never ask me back to teach again. But I was prepared for that. I thought, I'm not blaming it. I've chosen to
Yeah.
decide what I want, what I don't want, and I know there will probably be consequences here.
Mhm.
That they won't ask me back to teach because I've excluded some youngsters here. But interestingly, I had some emails from some other staff members who knew me, and they said, "Oh, we so wish we had the nerve to do what you did." So yeah, assertiveness it's definitely about trying to deciding what you want, what you don't want, definitely finding out what other people do or don't want, and then making a choice about where you're going to go with that.
Yeah, I think that is so important. Alone rephrasing sometimes when we are in situations that feel so overwhelming, to not say I have to,
Yeah.
but because even let's assume for 1 second you had to take them in your class for whatever reason. Alone, the difference between saying I have to teach them because to shift and to say I choose to stay, I
Yes.
choose to continue to teach, and even though that means they are back in, because for me right now, my need for whatever why you are
Yep.
still there is so
Absolutely.
important. And just like staying in this power of I choose, and whatever consequence may come, I choose because
Yeah.
of my need, and not I have to because that
Absolutely.
feels on the top of all the overwhelm. It makes me even smaller.
Yeah, yeah, and also another really useful thing to know is that when you decide what you have chosen to do or not to do, is often, think about, well, what if the consequences were this or that? What would your plan B be? And we often think this when we're organising an outdoor event. If we're organising to get together with friends for a barbecue, we think, okay, what if it rains?
Yeah.
What will I do? And we think of another plan, and then we feel more relaxed about having the barbecue because we've already decided what we're going to do if it rains. So it's the same with making choices. What if that doesn't work out? Well, just for the moment, without worrying about it too much, what could be a possible plan B? Because that can be really helpful in helping you also give you the confidence to make the choice as well, knowing, well, if I've somehow screwed up here, there's another path I can take. I've already thought of it.
100%. And you mentioned it in your answer around assertiveness and aggressiveness. And I read about that you differentiate between assertiveness, aggressive, passive, and passive
Passive
aggressive.
aggressive, yeah.
How do you make these differentiations, and how come that we still tap into all of that?
Yeah, because each of them serve us. There's advantages and disadvantages. So of course it's actually advantageous to be aggressive sometimes. If you say you have a 6-year-old daughter, if she said I'm going to go and cross the road myself, and she just let go of your grasp and went for it, you would become aggressive. You'd go, no, you're not going to. You'd probably shout at her and come back, and that's necessary. We need that in us. We need to be able to have anger and aggression to achieve something very, very quickly. The
Mhm.
difficulty with aggression is when we use it in times that are not appropriate. But that would be a very appropriate time to be aggressive. Passive, we're often passive. We all know what that means. That means just stepping back, being quiet, not taking part. That can often be a protective way of behaving. We see this when we watch nature programs with animals that, they curl up in a ball to hide from an aggressor, for example. Well, maybe we don't do that, but I remember years ago when I was going to have a hysterectomy, and the surgeon was fantastic. I really liked him. He's the connection between me and him was fantastic. He was great. I had so much confidence in him, to the point that normally I'd be very questioning about, quite sort of, well, how's this going to work and what will happen then, and why do I need to have to take that medication, and I could almost be quite challenging about it. But I just decided, you know what, the best way forward here is to be completely passive. I am going to do whatever he recommends in terms of when I have the operation, how I recover, what I do, what I don't do. Um, and that's not normally like me, but my goodness, it really worked for me. It was a huge advantage to just give myself up to it. And I was very fortunate that it was someone that I felt very confident in. So you can see how passivity can work then.
Mhm.
It doesn't work for us when we get trampled all over, and we don't step up and say what we do or don't want. And then passive aggressive is a way of behaving that's very underhand and manipulative.
Mhm.
But a good example of that would be probably in World War II. I think we've all probably heard of the French resistance. And so armies, soldiers are aggressive. They're there. We all know who they are and what they're about to do. Whereas the resistance workers, they can't be seen to, they don't need to be known. They've got to remain invisible, as it were. But they would do things like blow up the train lines so that goods couldn't get through. And that's a passive aggressive way of behaving. They're doing it aggressively but very underhand, and that's a positive thing. That kept them safe and it helped them to achieve their aims. But unfortunately, often passive aggressive behavior is when we might be sarcastic to someone, we might sulk, we might complain, we might not take responsibility for our choices, we blame other people. We do it in an underhand way. So, and then assertiveness is being clear and direct about what you do and don't want, taking into consideration other people's needs. But the disadvantage of assertiveness sometimes is other people can resent that you are able to step up and be clear about what you want and take responsibility for it. Other people can sort of envy that, but that's also something else that you have to deal with being assertive. Sometimes other people won't like it that you've made that choice, and that's what you're going to do.
Yeah, yeah. I love to add a few phrases in my handouts when I do trainings, just like as little starters. Do you have a few starters for being assertive?
Yes, I think things like if you're going to say what you do want, I'd just like to let you know that this is what I would like, or if you don't want this, I need to say that this is not what I want, and this is how I want it. So just very clear and direct. Not. Is it all right if I say something? I hope you don't mind. But actually, the thing is, that's sort of like.
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So, it can be someone like me, that's irritating. I just think, oh, where are you going with this? Just tell me what you want. Other people are more patient, but so be clear with what you want to say. Yeah, if you don't want to do something, it's perfectly okay to say, for example, I need time to think about it.
Mhm.
I'll
Yeah.
get back to you tomorrow, and make sure you do get back to you tomorrow. I think this is a cultural thing. I feel that my American cousins, quite literally, I have American cousins, are very good at saying, I'll get back to you on that. Whereas British people, we feel that we have to say right there and then what we want. There's nothing wrong with saying,
Yeah.
I'll get back to you tomorrow on that, as long as you do get back to the other person tomorrow. You have a right to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd like to think about it. Can I get back to you later? Yeah, that doesn't work for me. This is what would work for me. You can make other suggestions, but just be clear and calm and direct about what you do and don't want.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super helpful. And another very helpful book you wrote is How to Deal with Difficult People.
Yeah.
And we all immediately have a few people popping up probably in our
Yeah.
head, personal or supervisor or in
Yeah.
our life elsewhere. First of all, can you give us a selection of difficult people? Do you differentiate them, or are they, or is it just all the same?
Well,
Difficult.
in one way, they're all the same, because it's not so much that they are being difficult, but we're having difficulty dealing with them and managing them.
Mhm.
So we could, if I asked everybody to think of 3 people that they thought of as difficult people, they'd probably be quite different in the way that they're difficult.
Mhm.
But it's the fact that we struggle to deal with them. That's what makes them difficult people. They're not difficult.
Yeah.
We have difficulty.
Mhm.
So, of course, it can be people that won't cooperate and negotiate, people that are flaky, that let you down, they're unreliable, they're uncooperative, people that are aggressive, people that are disrespectful to you, uh, others that you find offensive in some way because maybe they're abusive to you or other people, people that are bullies, that and then even people that are very passive and don't step up and don't make a contribution and aren't clear about what they do and don't want. So, they can all be very different, but we have problems. It's us that have the difficulty, because for every person that we find difficult, someone else will say, I have no problem with them. I don't see them as I get on great with them. Difficult people have friends.
Yeah. I love that.
They do. So so other people don't find them difficult. So, and that's interesting as well. What is it? What is it about them that they somehow manage this other person?
Yeah. Yeah. So how do we become friends with our difficult people?
Yeah. Well, I don't think we necessarily have to be friends with them, but we do have to learn how to manage them. And there's a whole range of different things. It's about, deciding what your limits are,
Yeah.
what you will or won't accept,
Mhm.
what your expectations are of that other person as well. Maybe you're being a bit unrealistic in your expectations.
Yeah.
Um, Somebody asked me today, actually, what do you do if you're dealing with somebody that clearly doesn't seem to have any empathy, doesn't seem to have any feelings about how you might feel or other people might feel? And and I think they were expecting me to say, this is how you can change them and make them more of a feeling empathic person.
People.
Yeah, you can't. You
Always a
can't.
great idea.
Yeah, it is. But you can. What you can do is recognize what their limits are. That's the other thing. Is very often people are difficult because they're limited in some way. I'm not suggesting they have a disability. I'm just saying that they're not able to do that. So the unreliable friend, the indecisive friend. I have a friend that's very indecisive. She drives people round the bend. I recognize that about her being indecisive, and I sometimes accept it and just say, okay, Jane, so we could do this with this or this. You get back to me by the end of the week and let me know. And I know, and then I could call her at the end of the week and go, what have you decided? And she says, well, I'm still not sure. And I know that if I want her to make a decision, I've got to sort of almost coach her towards it.
Mhm.
Or I'll just go, okay, well, this is what I'm going to
Yeah.
do. You decide whether you if you want to do it this way or not. So I recognise with her that that's who she is. She actually happens to have type 1 diabetes, and when she has a low, she can't make a decision about anything. So there is that as well, and I don't think that that's something other people often don't realise about her. So recognising other people's limits,
Yeah.
and not having such high expectations.
Mhm. No, and I think what plays into this as well is that sometimes we mix up how we feel about something with our thoughts,
Yeah.
and that becomes difficult because I may think, oh, he's ignoring me or whatever that is. But at the end of the day, or if you have a late friend, sometimes it bothers you because you sit there for 15 minutes and maybe you feel uncomfortable in the environment, and these 15 minutes really are a big deal, and so you are aggravated when she comes
Yeah.
finally. But
Yeah.
another time, maybe I have to finish reading something and I'm really glad that she's 15 minutes late, right? And so
Absolutely.
comes back to me and what I
Yeah.
need in this moment. And as you said, if I know that I need clarity and a decision by today at 5, then that's what it is for me in order to see you today. Like if you come back at 5 and let me know, we can meet. If not, it's all right. Then maybe another time we can do
Yeah.
something together. And yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Decide what you want, and decide if you already know that, for example, that person's not very reliable. It's likely that she won't be come back with the decision. So what will my plan B be? What will I do? So that you've already got something in place.
That I'm not alone at home.
Yeah, yeah. Netflix again.
Yeah. No problem with that.
Yeah.
Jill, what is next for you? What book can we look forward to?
Well, I've got a lovely book that I'm really excited about. It's called Moments of Comfort: How to Find the Joy in the Little Things in Life.
Yeah.
And I'm particularly excited about it because it comes out next month in October, and
Mhm.
it's illustrated by, I've completely forgotten her second name. Her name is Eliza, but it's, you see her name on the book. She's an American illustrator who does the most beautiful illustrations. And so the book is each double page spread. It's a little hardback book, which, very be lovely as a gift. Um, it's a book for times when maybe you've just had a bad day,
Mhm.
or you've had a really difficult week, or you're going through a really difficult time, in a tough time in your life at the moment. So it's a book full of double page spreads with ideas and suggestions around what you can do to make life a little bit easier for, that day or for an hour. um, yeah, and it's beautifully illustrated, so I'm excited about that coming out. Moments of
It
comfort.
sounds like we all need that book.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and I was inspired by the pandemic, the recognition that we need something sort of almost on a daily basis, some little moments of joy and small pleasures, and actually, what all we need is some sort of prompts and ideas to think about what they might be for us, and new ones that we can explore. The book's full of ideas and thoughts that, yeah, that you might want to explore.
Yeah, wonderful. And it leads perfectly into my last question, which is, imagine you are my little good fairy that sits on my shoulder, and
Yeah.
I have not the best days, and I just feel I'm really not. I'm having a hard time being connected with me or with others. I'm in the busy day of being a health professional. What do you whisper in my ear?
I'd say think about what is going to, something that is going to provide some pleasure, a small pleasure in your life at the end of the day, whether that could be going to bed early, having a hot bath, having something nice to eat, uh, letting go of all your other commitments, getting a takeaway food delivered. What just know, and I think it's actually important for us all to really be more aware, almost write down a list of the sort of things that we know that give us comfort and joy, so that at the end of the day, when we do have difficult times, we can just switch off and move our minds to something that's can be more kinder and gentler to us. It's really important that we do that, and it can have such a huge make such a huge difference.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for all of your sharing and your input. This was such a rich and joyful session. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed. You had some fantastic questions to ask me, and yeah, it's been great chatting with you for the last hour, Karina. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, Jill.
Okay, bye bye. See you.